or the ever popular All the Indians Have Left the Area. It is now populated by slaves, and of course the all well-worn and often told globalish story of the inbred offsprings of prostitutes. A strange breed took over the land by hiding in the nooks and crannies of the Ramapough Mountains. Now all this was placed upon my people, while the exalted fell on their pompous knees to cry the disappearance of the noble red man by the very people they tried and continue to try to erase from history, hoping that somehow the stains of their own machinations and the blood on their own hands will not be found. The Ramapoughs, the Sweetwater clan of the Muncie people, the Wolf Band, we continue to survive with the very land where we had once been directed by Sachem Katona to keep watch over the sacred places until Lenape returned. Many of the Ramapough today continue to live by the same carbon footprints as our ancestors. The Ramapough Pass was questionably the most important piece of real estate in America at the time of the Revolution. Its importance remained so until 1947, as a choke point of the New York-New Jersey border would have eliminated any strategic advantage in the Northeast of the United States, just as it had during the American Revolution. What I'm saying is the Ramapough Pass is where my people continue to live today. Was at that time in history a redoubt, was a natural redoubt of which we controlled. We allowed the rebels at that time, who would have been George Washington and the boys with the pantyhose and the guns, to use the redoubt. It's important to understand the strategic value of the Ramapough Pass is as such. Without control of the Ramapough Pass, there was no way for the British or any adversaries to approach the New England colonies in any sizable force except off of the Atlantic Ocean. That was impossible. Or to come down through Canada or around through Pennsylvania. So by us allowing for the use of the Ramapough Pass, it eliminated any strategic advantage being had by the British in order to eliminate the revolution. The other thing that people might find somewhat interesting is that the first 900 cannonballs fired in the Revolution, the chain across the Hudson, the Capitol Dome, the Lady of Freedom across the top of the Capitol Dome was all made from Lenape iron deposits in Ringwood, New Jersey. At the mouth of the pass, Ake and de Maui Long is a large field, the place where the people gathered. In this field was the field of peace where many people from many different tribal nations gathered prior to the revolution. Allah named the grandfathers as the oldest tribe. The reason for that was because we negotiated peace between the nations as we went forward. So, the interesting thing is that although, as I said, the iron deposits and the location made it possible for the American experiment to succeed, although the names of the people that sold the land in the area so that the village of Sloatsburg, New York could be established in all of Rockland County, these very same people have no idea who the Ramapoughs are. They have no idea whatsoever. Or could the reason that they seem to be so forgetful is because that true narrative does not support the sort of enlightened look or the romantic look at America when you consider these people stole the land, enslaved the natives, to the degree that most people know that the first slaves in the state of New Jersey, sold in the state of New Jersey, were my ancestors. There were no Africans of any sizable amount in North America at that time. The slaves they continued to hound about being escaped slaves were Indians. And when we ran away to such an extent to cow us, they sent us to the West Indies to teach us and beat us and turn us into good slaves and send us back if we made it. These people did such a good job. would assume it was Mr. Willie Lynch's plantation, that when they got the science down correctly, they began taking the Africans that they couldn't control and sending them to the West Indies. So before this whole idea of cruelty and the diaspora of the Africans began, it began right here in New Jersey on the Ramapoughs. Didn't believe on, even it didn't belong somewhere across the sea. It started right here. Right here. And coming from the writings of some of the scribes that stood among some of the most prominent people of their day. One of them standing in the Ramapough Pass, one of these people, you may be able to recognize it from this narrative. One of them desired the timber. The other desired the iron. These are both extremely prominent people in the founding of America and still in the economic life of America, families. But they couldn't purchase the land because the Ramapoughs occupied the land. And at that time, there had been so many sort of misadventures in terms of acquiring land that the only way you could acquire the land was to get permission from the governor, if there were natives on the land. So they're standing there talking about the land, and the scribe says to them, well, you can't buy the land because there's Indians on it. The guy says, well, there's no Indians. So he says, well, isn't that the Indians that bring down the shot and the charcoal at night? The guy basically looked at him and said, didn't we just tell you there's no Indians? Case closed. I recently had lunch with some folks that are a member of some of these families, these founding families. And I asked them, I said, well, how'd you guys get control over everything? He said, I did a lot of research. He said, as far as I can tell, we took it. We took it. However, one can't steal one's land, one cannot steal one's dignity, and one cannot imprison people within some form of psychological diaspora by telling the truth about the founding of their wealth, of this country. The fact is, the land was founded on slavery. It was founded by enslaving Native Americans. And it was founded here, not in some far-off place. In 1911, as reported in the Utica Herald-Dispatch, President Taft was greeted in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The president smiled and he looked down as he espied the Sioux and the Ramapough Indians in their grand attire. So I guess President Taft knew we were around 1911. I want to leave you with a small citation. Genealogist Roger Jocelyn is in a certified report to the BIA traces the ancestry of modern-day Ramapough tribes in the mid-1700s. It says the Ramapough Indian bloodline can be traced to the Aboriginal Munsee tribe who occupied the Ramapough region for thousands of years before the first European settled in the New World. Now, having shared that with you, I think we have a tape of a well-educated, well-polished bigot, racist from Rutgers. And let me first say, Rutgers has been more than kind to the people lately. But when Mr. Thing was sharing his fantastic discovery of all of these inbred people, I was down at Princeton with a mentor of mine, Conrad Lynn, discussing freedom for other peoples. I guess you can see us here. There's an extremely harmful effect of this type of racism. It's ongoing. It's extremely popular. One of the reasons I believe that this continues to be popular mythology is because we're simply 30 miles outside of Manhattan. 3 minutes from my house, you see that well-known poster of Manhattan sort of sitting in the trees. That's not that's not a made-up sort of thing. That's for real. That actually exists. It's not an idealized picture. So we're going to watch this for a moment, yeah?
on the white box, I think. Oh, we just turned it on.
Scientific stuff.
We sit 30 miles from New York City. Why should it be so surprising that there's still Native American tribe here and it's still intact?
Indians are not allowed to move through time like the rest of us. We don't run around with frock coats anymore.
So now you have to turn the white box all the way over. Yeah, just turn the dial all the way up. You could also unplug the microphone.
Sorry guys, hold on just a minute.
It's plugged in over there.
Okay. So
Now we are having technical difficulties. So just bear with us, you know. I probably broke it.
No, it's definitely my fault.
Let's try that.
Alright, we're gonna just try it with the microphone up to the computer speaker and see what happens. Oh.
We sit 30 miles from New York City. Why should it be so surprising that there's still Native American tribe here and it's still intact?
Indians are not allowed to move through time like the rest of us. We don't run around in wigs and wear frock coats anymore. But Indians are supposed to be in leather to be Indians.
You shouldn't be going out there and impersonating. I don't go out and impersonate other people. I am who I am, and that's what I live with him.
Who is he to say who's native and who's not? Anybody that tells you they're pure-blooded this or pure-blooded that is lying.
Prick your finger and see how many sources your blood comes from. Oh my God, I'm a Native American. Well, you know what? A lot of people are. A lot of white people don't want to admit how black some of them are.
They call me half-breed, nigger, you name it. I put my kids on. I'll pick this kid. It is about racism. It's about the native people in this country. It's about the Ramapoughs being treated like dirtbags, like people have been doing for the last 200 or 300 years.
Some people look at it like you're trying to be something that you're not, but it's a feeling within inside. You know, you feel that this is who I am, this is what I want to do.
No matter what you think you are, the reality is when you look in the mirror, what you see is what the world's going to see, and that's how you're going to be defined. We are Ramapough Indians.
Response to that, I think, pretty interesting trailer. The fellow in the trailer was the chief that said, that was Harry Colton, Kerry Holton. He's the chief out, he was the chief in Anadarko. Let me give you some backfill. They went and handpicked him out of Georgia because he's supposedly a descendant of this guy called Black Beaver. So they called me up and they said, well, Chief, what do you think about Black Beaver? I said, never heard of him. He said, well, he used to take all of the cavalry around to the various Indian nations. And he was one of the only Indians out in Oklahoma that had this big, beautiful ranch. What do you think? Sounded to me like Black Beaver was an Uncle Tom killing his own people. If you had to go to Georgia to get somebody lighter than white folks, I'd wonder who Kerry is. And that's purely on a racist basis because that's what you're saying. Racism, raw, ugly racism, masking itself as reality. This clown here I'm not quite sure who the man is, but I would defy you regardless who you are. If you worked in a mine and you came out and he had your picture, you'd look about like that. But to write a book about it, let me help you with this Mr. Cohen clown. And I'm saying this because the effects of people like Mr. Cohen and Mr. Holt, when you put this scurrilous, racist attack on a child, and what I mean is we've had our children stood up in class, you know, I'm from Ireland, okay. Okay, Susie, okay, I'm from Italy, okay. Oh, I'm a Ramapough Indian. You're not an Indian. There's no Indians in this country. What are you talking about? You're not an Indian. Well, you know what? That becomes a crime against humanity because that kind of racism on a child lasts forever. That's not one of us going in a club and somebody calls you something, you blow them off. That's attacking a child. And when teachers feel justified in attacking children because of people like this, I think we need to look at what we're doing and what we're believing and apply some of that all well-known subject of critical evaluation, critical thinking. When I first met Mr. Cohen, and I didn't meet him, he was giving a talk over in Spring Valley at the Spring Valley Auditorium. And there was about, I don't know, 300 or 400 people in the audience. So I got up and I said, well, excuse me. I said, do you know me? No. Are you sure you don't know me? No. I said, are you sure you've never been to my home and you don't know me? He said, look, I'm giving a lecture here. I said, then what are you doing with my house up behind you talking about these strange inbred people? Mr. Honesty of Integrity there left the stage. But to show you the impact of racism, some very dignified little old lady got up in one of them gray cashmere coats. You should be ashamed. He's trying to help you people. Did Gorine help her? So racism sometimes tastes good if it satisfies your need to be dominant. That's what the Ramapough people have been living with for generations. Just recently, we've had people come out in the last couple of years with the documentation, fought in the Civil War, come home, told both families. One family I'm thinking about lived in Ridgewood, New Jersey. The other one lived in Connecticut. Both fairly affluent neighborhoods. And another one lived right here in Westchester. Same thing. Whatever. Don't tell anybody you're a Native American, and whatever you do, don't tell them you're a Ramapough. And I couldn't figure this out because most of our folks are somewhere between my complexion and two clouds, and we're saying, okay, well, maybe you're hiding out. We don't know why, but that doesn't run that well. Well, we found out the reason why. You'll love this one. After they emancipated the Africans out of slavery, this same group, you got to check this out for yourself. It's unbelievable. They thought they grandfathered in the Native Americans as slaves. They actually thought they grandfathered in slavery for Native Americans. And what these people were doing was trying to protect their family and their loved ones by telling them, don't tell anybody who you are. Finally, in the last 2 or 3 years, they felt safe enough to come out and say, hey, we've been hiding over here as somebody else. That's what racism does. You know? And you talk about it, you sort of get a double entendre if you're a little darker complected. I love this. You can be blonde, blue haired, and all of that. You'd be Indian in a minute. What are you? I'm an Apache. Okay, you an Apache. Put about 2 drops of melon on you and say, you an Indian. The next thing you get is, how much Indian are you? That's racism we've learned. And since we're talking about racism, I'm going to free you all up a little bit. I heard some beautiful stuff about all the great work being done around the world, and I know this school does a lot of good stuff. Here's something you can guard against and you can start to free yourself against. There's 2 things that's happened in history. One big thing was the doctrine of discovery, and the other one that had an equal sociopathical approach was Willie Lynch. And for those who have white clear understanding, we always hear the Trail of Tears. You know why there was a Trail of Tears? Because when they found out that the Africans that were living on the Native American land were not slaves but allies. Yes, there was 2 Indians that had slaves somewhere out there. They probably moved to Oklahoma. But when they found out en masse that the Africans and the Native Americans had become allies, and they could not, the planters could not overpower that social dynamic, they went to President Andrew Jackson and then had them drive the people out and become the Trail of Tears. We can add that to the history book. We can add this to the Ramapough history as resistance. There was a men's club in Hilburn called the Ungava. And you'd see pictures and they had their little aprons on, sort of like the Odd Fellows. And every once in a while you'd see a picture of women and they'd have, them old 30s dresses. You'd see a little yoke, and the yoke was a Eastern woodland pattern on it. What we found out was, and you can follow this through too with a computer, turned out that the Ungava was considered, the only free Native American land in North America. It was between Nova Scotia and the Arctic Circle. So I can only proffer that back in the day, since there was also a number of other tribal people living in the tribal area, the Ramapough tribal area, and we had thought that it looked like we had something to do with this freedom of this land. But when we did the Earth Day March in New York, where it was 500,000 people, a guy came up to me after the march down by the Javits Center, and he says, well, actually, it was Dallas Goldtooth. He said, somebody wants to meet you, Chief. And I'm saying, well, okay, 500,000 people, I'm sure they do. Turned out it was the chief and his wife from the Ungava, Nova Scotia, that wanted to come down and thank me because we were the same people, the same blood that kept them alive so that they could exist today. So we know that. We know what the actual genealogical reports is. The government knows. The people, they built the dome out of the iron and the cannonballs from Ringwood, but nobody knows who we are. Why is that? Other than just blatant racism, I'm guessing one of the big reasons is we're 30 miles outside New York. Everybody loved to go to Wyoming, right? That's nice, right? Go on out there, you got Indians, you got, Arizona, you got rocks, you got everything. About 2 weeks later, you need to get home, right? This is New York. It's a different headset. Yes. So okay. So what I'm saying to you is I believe one of the reasons we want to get rid of the tribal people to this moment, and they like to keep this myth going, is because people are still trying to push us off our land. Which leads us to where Two Clouds is going to introduce, is going to bring it up to speed. At this moment, we are still fighting to have religious freedom and to maintain our land, if you would. Thank you. Woody.
She's going to help you with the audio. She's going to help with the
Oh no.
All right. Hello. I'm gonna go over a little of what Chief Ferry was talking about. You see in the map, up where is Mawa, Southern, and Hilbert, you see the little river that said Ramapough Pass. Now, this goes right through the Ramapough Mountains. When you're up there, the mountains go from north all the way down south. This is the only opening that you have from the water here, the Hudson River, to the interior of the country. The next one is down in the Chesapeake area. So during the war, the revolution and everything, this area was very essential, as Chief was saying. Now, our ancestors, we were the keepers of the past. And this is our motto of the Ramapough tribe. were the keepers of this past, and we still are to this day. Those three towns there, Mawa, Ringwood on the other side there, Hillburn, Suffern, this is where the main villages of my ancestors were and where my people still live. And this is in our own oral tradition, what we know because, you know, this is where my family's from, you know, where Chief is from, but also from historical documents that are in the New Jersey Historical Society, for instance. So I'm going to get into that. Now, this guy, Cohen. I'll wait until I get it bigger again.
Sorry. Is the video?
I don't need the video yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Do you want to test?
Just asked it.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Do your thing.
Oh.
Make it big.
All right.
Of the Historical Society.
Now, this individual here, Cohen, is a reason why we cannot stand this individual. Back in, I believe it was the 70s, he supposedly wanted to trace our roots to see if we had any Native American ancestry, because what we know isn't enough. You know, like if someone were to go to anyone in this room and ask you where your grandparents are from, who are you? And if you say Nigerian or Irish or anything, nobody will ever question it. But as soon as you say, as my chief was just explaining, as soon as you say you're Native American, everyone wants to doubt it. Now, my grandmother she resembles Chief here, you know, she's Muncie, she's Ramapough from my father. My mother's mother is Irish and Mohawk, and, you know, people look at me and they always say, you're not Native. Well, you can say whatever you like to say, but I know who I am, I know my language. But that's neither here nor there. So now this individual, David Cohen, he wrote this here book, The Ramapough Mountain People. In his book, he tries to debunk our heritage. So here's a quote by Christian Tedros. It says, perhaps the most controversial research published on this tribe was by David Cohen, a professor at Rutgers University, whose genealogical research debunked the Ramapough claim to Indian tribal heritage. This particular source was devoid of archaeological research, yet used by the government as grounds to undermine their qualification for federal recognition. He insists that while many of these people identify with the American Indians, they possessed no authentic Indian cultural traits, instead labeling themselves as colored or non-white. Now, this is from his book, The Ramapough Mountain People. This here is from the first page. He quotes J.C. Storm saying that the Tuscarora Indians represent the first real influx into the mountains and constituted the first elements in the race of people that grew up there that has become known as the so-called Jackson Whites, which is a very derogatory term for my tribe. Now, the Tuscaroras are originally from the Chesapeake area in Virginia. They, during between 1710 and 1713, they were migrating up north to join with the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy, which is in the New York and Canadian area, the Haudenosaunee, and became the Six Nations. Around the year 1714, a group of a few hundred of them stayed in the mouth of the Ramapough Mountains, in the valley there, which is where Akiende Mawawilan, or now known as Mawa, is. Once the vast majority of them continued to migrate up north, a lot of them stayed. And they wound up intermixing. So from what Cohen is trying to say, the first real native influx was with the Tuscaroran people. And with this, he was trying to take away our claim to the Ramapough Mountains. Now, from the New Jersey Historical Society, it states that in the 1650s, many Indians moved from western Connecticut into northern New Jersey and southeastern New York. Now, as Chief Perry mentioned earlier, the Muncie Lenape people, the Muncie are the wolf band or the wolf nation of the Lenape tribe as a whole. Our territory was from a little north of Albany, as far south as the Raritan River, the northern side of the Raritan. And from here, Yonkers, Brooklyn, Bronx, all of this actually, all of New York City was ours. Eastern Long Island, Manhattan is actually our language. Manhattan, it means the island of many hills. So they kicked us out but kept our language here. But, and as far east as a little past the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. This was all Muncie territory. So here when it states that Indians moved from western Connecticut into New York, northern New Jersey and southeastern New York, these are still Muncie people that migrated. And this is before the Tuscarora migration also. Then we have the other quote here that also in the 1650s, a Shantuck vessel, a Mohegan pot, and a Muncie vessel were found together in Sloatsburg, New York. The vessel dated back to 1580 AD. Again, this is much further than the 1714 assumption, whatever you want to call it. So these two things, it debunks what Cohen was trying to say, trying to debunk us. And then also it states that 1710, after all their land was sold, the Tappan used with the Hackensack under one chief, united with the Hackensack under one chieftaincy in the Ramapough Mountains. Now, the Ramapough, this isn't quite in here, but I'll give a little bit of this history. Before 1709, 1710, the Ramapough band itself was located in southwestern Connecticut and Westchester, New York. That whole area was the territory of the Ramapough band. Now, in that area in Connecticut, there's a town named after one of our chiefs. His name was Katona. You have Katona, Connecticut. Now, in 1710, there was a treaty signed called the Ramapough Tract Deed. This Ramapough Tract Deed states that the Ramapough Indians, under the chieftaincy of Chief Katona, sold land, this tract of land, after which they migrated to the mountains that were known after them, named after them. So, if Cohen, and individuals like him, would have done actual research, it's right there, it's right, it's very blatant. I found this out, like this, And this was only in the 70s. He could have gone right to the Historical Society if he truly wanted to find this out. And then, Chief, do you want to touch on this?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to apologize for my short spiel on Mr. Cohen, because like I said once, I think I said it all. If he's giving a speech, I'm giving a speech on somebody and I got your house in the thing. And apparently there's no credibility there at all. But he's made a fairly good living at it. One of the things I would like to say, I got off a little bit on Willie Lynch, but I think it's important to understand the cruelty and the impact of Willie Lynch. So I'd like to finish up with this last bit, and I was talking about the importance of Willie Lynch was when he come back here as a consultant, he taught us how to be envious, how to divide each other, how to separate out from color, how to separate out what I say, who was high, who worked in the house, who could touch an animal. He taught us to be envious of each other. So now that has damaged, and let me also say this in general, the Native American community is about 50 years behind the black community in coming to terms with the effects of Willie Lynch. This is real, this is serious racism. This is what's happening now in America. The other part of that is this trick played on all the white folks. The doctrine of discovery. And let me first say it like this. It does not mean anything negative about anybody sitting in this room or perhaps alive today. What the doctrine of discovery did, and I'm sure you guys are a lot of your theological students, is probably the most highly elevated academic argument in the world. I mean, you could sit there and just, you can't go brain dead from the elevation of how to figure out the doctrine of discovery. Here's what the doctrine of discovery did to you today. So I hope when we leave out of here, both black, white, brown, and green, we're better people. The doctrine of discovery over a period of nearly 500 years stuck in your psychic somehow that you are entitled, even though you don't walk like you're entitled. It's allowed you to think you're entitled. It's allowed you to think you're a little bit better, even though in your heart you would never do anything to put anybody down. But as long as that's there, there's always going to be one somebody, we like to say this, know everything. No matter what you do, like I said, there's people that would step to us, they know more about being Ramapoughs than we'll ever know. They can quote David Cohen like it's the Bible. You know? So what I'm saying to you is understanding the impact of what the doctrine of discovery has done to us as a society, what David Cohen has done to us not David Cohen, Willie Lynch has done to us as a society. Once we understand that, we can truly be equals amongst each others. But until we're willing to accept the premise that these were learned, taught behaviors, we're not going to be able to get beyond them. And the unfortunate thing is, like I said, the average Native American is maybe 50 years behind the black community. I would say the Ramapough community might be another 25 years behind the average Native American community. Why? Because as recently as 2 years ago, our children were being stood up in school and denigrated. When Donald Trump, we first went for federal recognition. Donald Trump, we thought it was brilliant. He come down and he blocked our federal recognition. We thought it was because, 10 years before there was a gaming law, we said, man, this guy's really a brilliant businessman. We didn't even know there was a gaming law. And that would have been good, but then he followed it on with a lot of racism. He looks more like Indians than I do. What kind of Indians are they? They just want to have bingo parlors. All of this racism, what did that do? That brought up all of that racism of the past and went right back into, we don't need to hire you people. You don't have a credit rating, you people. You don't need a job, you people. And worst of all, like I said, when you put that little nastiness on a child, that becomes really sort of a crime against humanity. So that's what we've been facing, and we've been facing it to this moment. And I want to really be thankful of folks like yourselves and some other forums now that people are saying, well, let's at least hear the truth, or at least let's hear enough so we can make our own decision. There's places in the Ramapough Mountains that have the same spiritual insight of any place in the world, and we don't dare to open them up, because the minute we do, either we don't own them, or somebody that does will either come and bulldoze them or take them over and to sell them. So you'll find we've got a number of sacred sites throughout the metropolitan area that we don't even rake the leaves. If you see it, it would be brush, because we don't have any control. Here's a good thing, you like education? Morwell school system, Morwell, New Jersey. This is less than 20 years ago. I would say maybe 15 years ago. They had an unwritten law to get the tribal children out of school at the age of 15 or 16. They got them out. And this went on for generations. This went on with people far older than myself. For generations it went on. The interesting thing was, Morwell also employed the tribal people in the Department of Public Works, where some of them got really good paying jobs. I mean, jobs I think going to college would make you want to have, nice paying jobs. The problem with that is, if the only place you can get a living wage job without an education is for the town, that's a form of modern day indentured servitude. It don't make if you're making $70 or $80 or $90,000 a year driving a snowplow. If that's the only place you can get money to drive, you become the indentured servant. That's going on now in this century in Morwell, New Jersey, and also in Ringwood, New Jersey. That's intense racism. Everybody's going, about a third of our population in Ringwood, as I'm sure you all heard about it with the toxins, are dying from direct result of the toxins. A little history on that. Mr. Ford was one of those people in the Ramapough Pass that wanted to timber. It was the Fords that did a thing called the Vineland study. The Vineland study was a study done in the 30s to help identify subhumans, of which some of our ancestors were a part. He did such a wonderful job that the Nazi Party gave him a medal for his work at identifying subhumans. And then he took that technology, brought it to Germany, and started putting little, I guess, Jewish kids away. We come to one of the best known, most beloved foundations in the country, the Ford Foundation, sponsored eugenics. You know what eugenics was, right? That was identifying sterilized native women because they were subhuman. Too big to be human. Fast forward. Instead of those mines I talked about, which should be giving tours, because these were mines that were essential to the development and the creation of the Americas. The Fords wanted to put high-end housing, executive housing, where the natives lived. They couldn't do it because of other codiciles and things that had to go on. They didn't have a problem. That's when they started dumping the toxins in the mines. But they're not being held liable, even though my people at this moment are dying from that quiet genocide. That's what racism does when nobody speaks up. When nobody thinks it's funny. So here we are now, and I'll leave off where some of the other speakers were. Where are we going to be if the great white dope keeps going forward with this current agenda? We're stepping into fascism, and I would suggest that the only people that have the capacity to change that are actually the women. So when you all get ready to move, I will do my best to make sure that the rest of our men somehow can back you up. But I don't believe that these people in power or anywhere else in the world, they cannot deal with you psychologically. And we're going into a psychological warfare. So as you take the lead, you will be taking the lead for women all over the world to stand up. So just let me say, not God bless the Queen, God bless all the rest of you, good luck. But it's real, and you don't have to wait till next time because the war started yesterday. Like I said, this whole idea of ethnicity and racism, and essentially, there is an ongoing part right this moment to ensure that the Ramapoughs are erased from history. Think about it. All of the things our ancestors were involved in, we get no credit for. We are inbreds. One of the stories I like, they always say, well, you all have the same central names. We do. Back in the mid 1700s, they outlawed the use of any native name, native dress, or ceremony. So what would happen if everybody in this room were out picking berries or whatever we're doing, playing horseshoes, whatever people were doing, and the guy come up with the pantyhose and the gun and said, what's your name? You would use the name of the best known local, usually the local governor at the time. So you might say, my name is Bob Knucklehead. And they'd say, well, what's your name? Well, you're Sally Knucklehead and Jane Knucklehead and Bill Knucklehead. Now, fast forward with the same racist paradigm. Remember, you give them the Knucklehead name because you want to stay alive. Now, let's move forward 200-300 years. Oh, they're all interbred, they're marrying everybody. No. You got about 30 different families, all named Knucklehead. But if you go with David Cohen and the specialist and racist, then you got Mary Knucklehead, married Bob Knucklehead. He's sleeping over here with Jane Knucklehead. Now you got this crazy inbred group of knuckleheads. But without applying critical thinking or looking beyond the surface, it appears intriguing and true. Another part of this tale that our people have had to live with. So, I mean, it's all very simply explainable and provable if you apply critical thinking. If you don't apply critical thinking, then maybe you are a knucklehead. So let me leave you with that. And is there any questions I can maybe... I'm sorry, I'm cutting my partner out here. He's apparently whitewashing the screen now. I don't know what's going on. It's camp, I'm sorry.
Okay. Now this brings us to today. After what's been going on in in Standing Rock with the Dakota Access Pipeline back in October, the tribe decided that we should start a prayer camp on our ceremonial land in Mahwah, New Jersey. So after October 16th is when we started it, and up until now, we've still been experiencing a lot of this racism in the town. I'm one of the people that's been there since the beginning, October 16th, so about 6.5 months now. And this racism is mad. You'll be able to see this.
Yep, Sarah.
I don't know how to get rid of the bottom.
We're good to go.
We originally put up these teepees in solidarity with the people at Standing Rock who are fighting not only a pipeline out there, but fundamentally poisoning of water, not just the Missouri River, but really a culture and a system that is placing profit above our health, safety, and welfare pursuits.
So this land is very special to my tribe. And I wanted to get involved to help whoever I could. So when we have the first meeting about trying to stop the pipeline and solidarity with Sarah, I decided then that I would be here.
It's not a camp. We're not running a Boy Scout camp. Camp is synonymous with the word pray. It's a prayer camp. The interesting thing is that the building pipelines are carrying the same backer crew as it is out in the Dakotas. There is no domestic market for any of this oil. So other than greed and avarice, there's really no need for it to be endangering not just tribal lands, but to be endangering the water systems for millions of people is unconscionable.
A lot of people don't really understand the danger of what's going on. You know, like some of our neighbors. They don't really understand the severity of having a pipeline leak until it's too late. And until they realize that, you know, you can't drink any water, you can't grow any food, you can't even shower because the water is no longer water. Then what are they going to do? You know, then it'll be too late for all of us.
So that's what we're doing now. Up in Jersey. So the township, Chief may want to speak about this more also, but the town has been fining us for having teepees. You guys will love this. We were fined for illegally laying mulch down on our property, for laying stones. We were fined for building those teepees. They said that they're permanent structures. and we can have permanent structures. But the thing with teepees are, they're not permanent. You know, it took us for that big teepee, it took 4 of us about 20 minutes to put it up. And the smaller teepees, it only takes about 10 or so minutes, 2 people. You know, and you take it down to half the time. So they were charging us $1,000 for the teepee and even more for the mulch and such. And we built the cook shack and with an extra awning on it to guard the wood from the elements. And they were charging us $3,500 a week for this awning. So now they've halted this for now. We're trying to raise money for, give me a few more minutes, I'm sorry. Can I have like 5 or so more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're trying to raise money for lawyers and an architect and an engineer, so we could have this site plan done for the town so that they don't continue to find us. Because what they'll do, actually, this is a very historic thing in this country. President Thomas Jefferson said, find the Indians so much that the only way they can pay it back is by giving their land. This is what the president said. And this is what the town and the towns of that area have been doing to our tribe. And that's what they're trying to do now. They're trying to take this here land. So we need support. However, you can give support. Even if you just come up there to say hi. I do canoe tours on the river. Yeah, it's beautiful, you know. You guys, everyone, just tell everyone, let the whole city come up there. All the information is there on the flyer that Kat handed out. And I have cards also. I don't think my telephone number's on it. So I won't waste your time anymore. Thank you. Questions?
How far along is the pipeline? Where is it now?
Pilgrim Pipeline doesn't have the permits yet. So they're still attempting to get those permits.
Is it held in?
Yes. Yes.
Is it NRDC? Are they funding it?
In DC?
No, NRD, National Resource Defense Council. Are they ones funding?
I don't know. I'm not sure, honestly. But this pipeline, as you may know, it's supposed to go from Albany to Linden, New Jersey, and it's going to go 3/4 of a mile away from where this camp is, through our mountains in Mawa, very close to Ringwood, like right on the border of Mawa and Ringwood. And in those woods back there, I hike those woods all the time. There's beautiful creeks and brooks and springs everywhere back there. So this pipeline is gonna go right through all of it. And this is water that goes into the river, you know, for the fish and everything. And it just all gets straight. Exactly. It's all just, you know.
Are they connected to the weather barges that are parked on the river?
Yeah, well, they're all part of the same system. One of the things they're doing is, and I should stand up. One of the things that, one of the reasons it's so important to speak out about the pipelines, and I guess you know the president just recently basically eliminated any opposition to it legally. Not only are they carrying the same back and fuel from Albany to Linden, New Jersey, they're essentially going through 200, I think, 11 streams and whatever, but they're also going through the New York City watershed. And when they get right down here at the end of the tap over here where we live in Ramapough, it's going through one of those 7 sole source aquifers in the country. That aquifer itself supplies water to approximately 4 million people in New Jersey. But keep this in mind, if they destroy one of these watersheds, and they've just had a spill about 3 weeks ago, fortunately it avoided going in it, they're going to destroy the capacity of New York City to drink water. So my question would be this: if at that point we're destroying the livelihood for millions, the way for millions of people to live, can that be described as a crime against humanity? Because your money and your support and your background is not going to help you, because as the folks says, you can't drink oil. And that's really the thing. And what I'd like to say is not only would we like to have, we need everyone's help, let's think about what this is. The Native Americans, both here and in the Dakotas and around the country, we have been little more than canaries in the mine. We've been trying to say, please wake up. We don't have the capacity to stop these people by ourselves. We need everyone, and everybody that drinks water, we need to stand up. And now that we're walking forward, and I don't mean to be disparaging except for one person, this guy really is the great white dope. We're in danger up in here. So let me leave you with that. I don't want to get on a roll with it, but let me at least thank you all again. And I guess we're...
Thank you.